I do wonder, people with Stanleys, I'm like, do you actually always have something in there, or are you just carrying that around to make people think you do?
What I hate is
just a statement.
That's what I'm thinking.
If you
I'm
bring
like,
one to church with you, like I have coffee in it, and I got to carry it around the rest of the morning.
Right, exactly. And they're huge and metal, and who wants that? It's terrible.
I
So
don't have a Stanley.
you have a Stanley?
Well, not a big one like that, no.
Okay.
Not like the teeny.
You have a reasonable, the men's
I
Stanley,
have a
which was the
men's,
original
yeah.
real Stanleys.
Wow, he must be doing well here.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm like,
That's like
how
a
much-
status.
how
It's like
much can we
driving a
agree to
Mercedes.
Back in the day when they were cheaper.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Like I have the knockoff. It's fine.
I have the big, the big coffee container
Yes.
Stanley.
Yeah, the one that looks like you're carrying a Starbucks with you in your pocket.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not in your pocket.
Oh, so yeah, it doesn't fit.
It won't
your
even
pocket.
fit in my backpack.
That's true.
Things
So
are
what were
huge.
you complaining about not having coffee at the camp out for? Then you had coffee.
No, I didn't have coffee.
You should. Well, you had the ability to have coffee.
I just need coffee always with me.
That's right.
But it's too inconvenient to fill up a Stanley because I've gotten so spoiled because I have an espresso machine now. And so I can't.
Whole nother
I was like, you
So
have just
I-
entered
how long
another-
would it
elite
take?
coffees.
This is why I drink tea.
Right,
It's 'cause
I
you
drink
don't-
6 shots a day.
When my tea gets expensive, it's like $20 for 15 bags.
Wow.
When yours gets expensive, it's like $20,000.
Yeah, we just buy the big
Okay.
bags at Costco.
Okay.
Like the
Okay.
big,
Well-
like the mountain. We don't even get the espresso roast.
So you spent the expensive money on the espresso machine,
Right.
and then you use the cheap coffee in it.
Well, it's funny. It's not cheap coffee,
Okay.
but we actually really like the taste of it, so it works out
Okay.
for us. It's the mountain blend from Costco. Well,
That's fair.
the problem is that I can't. So I drink 6 shots a day,
Okay.
which is, I mean, that's all I need, and I'll put it in an
Wait,
Americano.
6 shots a day?
6 shots a day.
At once?
Yes.
Oh my
In
God.
Americano, right? I'll fill it up with water this much. So it's in one of those to-go cups,
So when I get you in the morning and I'm talking to you, you're on 6 shots of espresso.
Every day.
That's what this is.
every day.
Okay. Your
Yeah,
personality.
and I can't
He's
survive
coherent
without
at
it.
that
I was gonna say, yeah,
About 2 p.m., my creativity's
He's
gone.
crashing.
It's gone.
wow.
So.
It better be.
So I want you to imagine filling up one of them Stanley thermoses
Yeah.
with shots of
With-
espresso.
You fill that with
No, I'm just
Okay.
saying, how long would it take?
That's a good question.
That's why I
thought
can't
you were
carry it
telling me-
around. I'm like, it doesn't fit in my lifestyle. I
Okay,
don't-
that's what I thought you were saying
know?
you did for a second. And I'm like, you have a
can-
Stanley mug full of espresso.
What I could do
shots.
is I could do like 20 shots and fill the rest up with hot water.
I dare you.
I want to see. I second that. I want to see what that would do to you. I want to watch you have a heart attack in the office.
Well, think about your espresso machine though. Like he was making fun of how much it was, but every time you make another shot of espresso,
That's true.
it's actually
Okay.
geting cheaper per shot.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty
Okay.
sure it's already paid for itself.
You couldn't go to Starbucks for that much.
Yeah, it's paid for itself by far. I mean, you think about it.
That's going.
Oh,
to the
listen,
forge.
listen. The coffee has worn off.
what coffee does to you,
see, this is interesting because I had no intention of saying that. What I wanted to say was 6-shot espresso. So please don't miscalculate.
I'm
what
glad we're
saying.
not live streaming.
It's a 6-shot espresso.
Okay.
If you think about that every day,
Yeah.
that
It leads to this apparently. So we're getting.
Send me a copy.
it's bad.
Oh, we're getting.
That's
We're
so
gonna. This is
bad.
going on file somewhere. I don't know where.
Anyways, that has nothing to do with politics.
And luckily, we have it all recorded. so I'm very
Actually,
excited about that.
actually, the illustration about the misspeaking has a lot to do with
Darn
politics,
right, it
right?
does. Sure, yeah.
Isn't it interesting that we, when we disagree with someone, we will actually expect more of them than we expect out of ourselves.
Oh wow.
So in this conversation, I have mistakenly said a curse word, and it was an honest mistake because my brain was thinking faster than my tongue in expressing 6 shots of espresso.
See, he jumped right back on that horse to make sure.
Yes,
Yeah, exactly.
I
You wanna
wanted
make sure
to,
we
I
have
wanted
the
to
audio.
really articulate that, right?
That was good.
And by the way, none of this has been planned. You
No.
guys know this.
Oh, we're well
Testimony
aware.
guy.
Yeah.
So, just because I have these verbal slips, and by the way, I still do stuff like this, just not at that level.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that I'm not able to comprehend, right?
Right.
But as we get older, I'm 46. I'm not going to say how old Stu is here.
We all
Thank you.
know.
Yeah, you're welcome.
They stopped keeping records.
They-
We'll put it on the
My eyes are getting bad. So like
Okay.
at 46, I'm now having, this is just within the last year, I'm having to start read things Like, I actually know what it means to pull a book away from me to try to read the letters. And now I've got readers that I've refused to wear.
Yes, you do. Yeah.
And so the whole idea is, as we get older, our bodies obviously break down.
Yes.
But then there's an added benefit. The added benefit is we grow wiser through the experiences of our time on earth.
Yeah.
And how we study God's word and stuff like that. So in a like way, I would imagine people in politics experience the same things. As they get older, there are times where they're not firing on all cylinders, but at the same time, they have vast amounts of wisdom, vast amounts of experience. I think what's really bothering me is that we oftentimes, now I'm not commenting that people don't get to the point where they shouldn't be in charge of certain things. I think if you have someone who is operating an airplane and they have seizures, obviously
you don't care how much experience.
No,
Right,
I don't care how
a lot
much
of-
wisdom,
yeah.
experience, or no, they don't need to be doing that. So I'm not arguing that point, but I am arguing that we need to be really careful when we pick apart someone's life and do it in such a way where we can't give them grace in the times where they are obviously misspeaking, and they catch it, right? And you know, with Biden specifically, I think there's a lot of people who are against his agenda, and I understand that. I don't like everything the guy stands for, specifically pro-choice and many other things. But we need to be careful about picking people apart by making mistakes.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
Just because they're against what we think. And so there's got to be some grace there.
Yeah, 100%.
Because God doesn't do that to us. Because it would be really bad if he did.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So there's some part of this where we have to recognize that when we're talking about politics.
Oh, absolutely.
Just the humanity of it. Because I don't want a perfect president. I want someone who's authentic and real.
Yes. Oh, my word.
I want someone
Please.
who's real.
I think we all long for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want fake, propped up people who pretend to be perfect. I don't want any of that.
Yeah.
And I think that's why Trump or others who have become popular, we are drawn to people who can articulate what we want to say but don't, who are authentic.
Yeah.
And he may say it, people may say it offensively, and that's a whole nother issue. But we kind of just want to be able to, we want to be who we are.
Right.
And we want people to see who we really are and to accept us for that.
All right, so how are you going to steer this ship, Elijah?
I'm leaving it fairly unstructured because I feel like we can figure this out.
Okay.
Or we won't, and the ship will just sink and it'll be a beautiful explosion.
we've
already, I mean, it has been.
We've already
it's been
launched
quite a journey.
into a topic from...
Listen, and we're not letting that one go. Don't worry, we're going to bring it right back.
That obviously was a God-given
Yeah,
thing.
exactly.
I did not intend
The
to
fact
curse.
that you're able to restart. We're going to have to bleep our first episode, Jason. How is that going to look? A church releases a podcast that's immediately...
Six shots
test your editing
of
ability.
espresso.
There are children listening. I hope. Actually, I
It's
hope.
a family show.
Yeah, exactly. Come on. Oh,
I want it
goodness.
to be, I promise.
Today, we're going to be addressing the question, I think, that's on everyone's mind. And for the record, actually, I'll ask the question first. So the question we're answering today, how should we as Christians respond to today's politically volatile climate? Like, overall, it's just chaos, insanity. And for the record, we met about this last Tuesday to decide on a topic. Today is Monday, July 15th. The world has changed a little bit more since we first started talking about this, as is kind of the pattern these days. So when we met, we were talking about the debate specifically. So our two presidential candidates, Joe Biden and Donald Trump, had just had a debate. A lot of people were concerned coming out of that debate. There were a lot of thoughts, and a lot of what we were hearing was, what if I don't agree with either person 100%? How do I, as a Christian, kind of respond to that? And then how do I respond to my friends, my people who have just, like, everyone on earth, I think, is feeling very insecure right now.
Oh, yeah.
And it is bubbling up in really weird ways. So how do we as Christians look at that, address it? And so that was where we were coming from as of last week. And now today there's been an assassination attempt as of Sunday, I believe. Saturday, there was an assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. And now we are dealing with that as well as a nation. So what I want to start out with is kind of, let's introduce ourselves. I guess some people might not know who we are. Give me an intro, who you are, what do you do here? And then let's talk about where you're at. Give me a snapshot of kind of what you're dealing with and how that's looking from your perspective as you're seeing the world we're living in today. Cool. Stuart, you kick us off.
Well, I am Stuart Poteet, and I'm the executive pastor here at Lazy Mountain Bible Church. And what do I do here? That's a great question.
I think we all have many.
Be careful how you answer.
I basically support this gentleman sitting next to me on the couch.
Okay.
Make sure that he's able to focus on what he should be focusing on. So hopefully de-weighting the burden that he carries for this church. Yeah. Was there more to your question?
Yeah. So with everything
with
going
the
on,
current.
where are you at? Give us a snapshot of what you've been
man.
working through lately.
Well, we were talking a little bit earlier, and like my mind, I grew up in a family of gun collectors, and so my mind immediately goes to the logistics of what happened on Saturday, and so that's kind of this weekend. I processed. I think a lot of people are asking a lot of questions, but with the turmoil and all that, I think where I am is resting that we serve a sovereign God who is amazingly gracious, in control. Yes, we can have different opinions, but reminding myself to be civil in those and recognize the humanity in all the people involved, whether all the way down from the president to people I interact with, talking about these issues, is realizing we can disagree, we can see things very differently, and we can still be civil and kind and respectful and honoring God in those discussions.
Awesome. Love that.
Not that I do that perfectly.
Right, exactly.
That's my goal.
The kicker there.
Totally.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, so I'm Jason, the pastor here, the lead pastor at Lazy Mountain Bible Church. And as far as where I'm at with all of this, I think that there's a vast middle in America that has not been heard for a long time. When you turn on the TV and the news, what you get is the extreme sides of either view. And the more extreme they are, the more I believe, the more people gravitate towards them, and that's why they present themselves that way. I don't like that because I think for a long time, America had been mostly moderate. And I know some people have fits when that's said, but I think really a lot of Americans just want sanity. They don't want, and maybe I could be wrong, but I'm expressing what I want. They just want people who respect one another enough to be able to disagree without throwing bombs. They want to be able to be prosperous, to be able to have an environment where they can live and work and save and make a name for themselves in the sense of be successful for them and their families. I think they want an America where they're able to worship however they choose without feeling like they're persecuted, whether Christian or Muslim. And I think if we're honest as Christians, we should want that. Because if we live in a country that allows freedom of religion, then we're in a country that will also allow Christians to be free. So we want that. But that means, at a minimum, that we have to have the ability for politicians to talk to one another without making threatening displays that could lead to violence. And I really believe that that's where this country's at. We've gotten to a point now where we're so extreme on the far ends that when we talk to one another with knives instead of olive leaves. And that's unfortunate because I have neighbors and I don't talk to them the way that the politicians do.
Right.
So the politicians no longer are reflecting me at all. And therefore, when I go to vote, I don't really know who to vote for. I know who to vote for based on my views, which I'll be candid, my views are more conservative. But oftentimes I don't even like who I've been given to vote for.
Right.
Because they're not speaking the way I would speak. That's kind of where I'm at. And so my prayer for the country is that that we could still be united even though we don't agree on everything, that we can still respect each other even though we don't agree on anything. Why? So we could have peace. Because the tendency is the more extreme you get in your politics, that's what's going to lead to extremism in the country. So, and then that benefits no one.
Right,
Not
exactly.
America, not the world, or anyone else.
We're all stuck here in a chaos bubble that just keeps getting worse and worse. Yeah.
Right.
I love that.
Yeah. And I think the Bible commands us, Paul commands us to pray for our governing authorities, because peace will give us a way to share the gospel. Like, in a time of peace, the gospel can flourish, as long as we're on mission as Christians. So we want to be praying for peace. That's something that we want. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, cool. Thank you both. I'm Elijah. I guess I can do this too. I'm our media director here. And so that title's kind of confusing. I do a lot of things. Anything that technical needs to be done. I'm also a licensed pastoral counselor. So psychology counseling, kind of my jam. And so for me right now, where I'm looking at all this, I come at it from a much more like social people-based perspective, because what I've noticed is that the reflection of the anger that we're seeing that people are exposing politically, that it's just like online, you go on social media, everyone is just on fire, exploding, going crazy. And I think that's actually what I always tell people is anger is an externalized version of internalized stress. So what I'm seeing is a lot of anxious people who don't know what to do with their anxiety, who are now outletting it onto the one thing that everyone can agree is a little bit chaotic, bit chaotic. It's pretty awful, actually, politically. And so I think what I've been dealing with a lot lately is just concern over where people are and where people are going, and that it's not going to get better because society is now just bouncing off each other and we're all just kind of spiraling at the same time in all different directions. And I think politics reflect that. I think society reflects that. So it's a lot of different layers in there. So my concern right now is, okay, what am I as a believer, as a Christ follower, actually called to do practically? Because the ministry I was given is not the ministry of politics, it's the ministry of reconciliation. So what does that mean in a time where everyone's focused and everyone is putting their anxiety and their stress out into politics? Where should I be focusing myself? Because that's probably not the best use of resources as a Christ follower. But at the same time, then how do I also address that? Because it's a real conversation. It's a relevant conversation that we all need to have. So all that fun stuff just stirring around in there. It's weird. Yeah.
Also, you're talking about stress and like, how do I stay on mission and connect? And I think anytime there's stress, and even with the most recent thing going on, from the debate to the assassination attempt this weekend, those stresses, those events can create opportunity because they create dialogue.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Then we can drive those. We have the opportunity to drive that in a different direction, or to calm or to stir. And we can, we have our own. I also lean fairly conservative, full disclosure, and so then it's easy for me to get caught up in my, things. I'm feeling stress in the current economy and the current system and the direction things are going, and so then I can get personally caught up, and I forget this isn't about me. This is I serve somebody who it is about, and I'm off mission if I'm driving my own agenda.
Absolutely.
I can have my own opinions, but I need to be very careful how I express those.
I think that really weighs into this as a Christian. How do I respond to the current climate, right? Well, I take that a step further. Okay, so as a Christian leader who has influence over other Christians, how do I respond? And over the years, there's been some people who have been, and I'll try to be graceful with this, they've been less than pleased with how I deal with politics. And it's not because I've bashed, or it's actually because I haven't spoken enough about it in their taste, right? But there's a reason why I've done that intentionally, because there are certain leaders who will use their platform to push one candidate over another, and what they're doing is they're isolating other groups of people. And I never want to play to a political party as a pastor. I never want to do that. Now, I will have to say there are exceptions. Obviously, if we have Hitler, there's times and seasons where you're going to have to say, hey, and yes, I'm fully aware that some people call Trump Hitler and all that stuff. I think there's a vast difference between what Hitler did and actually did without using rhetoric. Right. And there were signs, right? I do believe this as a pastor, as a Christian leader, we should start speaking about, hey, America, Christians, be warned that this is, and so I will speak that socialism historically is no friend of Christianity. I mean, I don't apologize for that. I believe that I'm speaking very accurately about that. If you look at what Mao Zedong did in China, 20.1 million people slaughtered. If you look, we tend, when we forget history, we tend to repeat it.
Oh, definitely.
And so let's be very careful about what we stand for and what we don't stand for. And so that's kind of where I'm at with this. But as we're talking as Christian leaders, I want to make sure that we take a Christian response.
Yes.
And when I start thinking that way, I start thinking really about the biblical stories. The first one that comes to my mind, Stuart, is is Daniel and his friends.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, I really start thinking about how Daniel and his friends, they were living under a dictator. Nebuchadnezzar was a straight up dictator. And he was a tyrant, and whatever he said got done. Just think about it. We think in America about due process, right? So if someone is caught doing something, we'll have a trial, a jury of your peers. We'll have a very lengthy, if you got really good lawyers, it'll be tied.
It goes on for years.
Right.
For years. Right. And then it may be thrown out from some minor discrepancy. Nebuchadnezzar was not like that. When you disobeyed him, there was no court and jury. He is the court and jury. He sets up the fiery furnace immediately and throws the three friends of Daniel's into it because they refuse to worship him. Yeah. Right? And so you've got this idea and you've got this whole outlook of government from their view. Government from their view, even in that moment, if you remember, when King Nebuchadnezzar was asking them, okay, when I tell the band to play, it wasn't a band, it was the zither and the lyre and all these instruments. When I tell them to play, you worship my image, and if you don't, I will throw you into the fire. And they actually respond and say, "O King," right? They give this eloquent plea to the king, and then they basically defiantly say, we will not do this because we worship the Lord. And even if he doesn't save us, we'll still trust in him. Yeah. And I think that's the key. The key is that there is this respect, even though you disagree.
Yes.
And that's really important. There's respect. Even so, I don't ever want to get up to the pulpit on Sunday morning and start preaching in such a way that dishonors the current administration. Yeah. See, because that stokes flames. That stokes fire. But that's doing what the world does. What the world wants to do, and when I say world, non-Christians, what they want to do is they want to win debates by undercutting the character of other people. Right. And in that you lose respect. Yeah. And we can respect people who aren't Christians. We should model that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And it's amazing too when you look at that story, like you said, they honored the king to a certain line, to the point of, okay, this is now where you've crossed a line where you're trying to take the place of God, and I'm not going to honor that.
Yeah.
But I'm honoring you for the position God's put you in, regardless. Which is crazy if you think about, like, in that time. I think we talk about how how volatile politics are, how tricky it is to be a Christian in political climates. And I'm like, look historically, like in the Bible times, you're talking about like you said, snap of a finger and you're in a fire. Like, it's as quick as the consequences are much more real in those times. Yes. Not to say there aren't consequences now to some extent, but
that it couldn't get that way.
Exactly. Or that we couldn't go that way and we need to protect from that. But like, if you look at the insecurity there and how they still follow this mission of, I'm honoring the person who's been put in charge of me up till this extent to where God's called me. It's pretty phenomenal.
When as you're talking, I'm thinking, you're a military and you still respect your commander in chief, even if you disagree with the direction you're being given, because you're respecting the office, and that order. And I think that's an important distinction to make.
Yeah.
And we do that. I think, you said we lack the consequences because of our freedom of speech and our freedom to protest. We have a lot of great freedoms in our country, but because of that, we can oftentimes, because there are no consequences for me disrespecting someone, especially somebody who will never hear what I said or see what I said, or I won't see them face to face. Because I love that you brought up your neighbors again. Kind of go back on that is when you're looking somebody in the eyes, it's hard to disrespect them without knowing you're disrespecting them. But I can disrespect somebody who, a celebrity or a politician, because they're never going to see me. I'm never going to actually look them in the eye.
Yeah, you're a little fish in a very big pond.
It's like social media, the online warriors who will comment things they would never say to your face. And how many arguments have started because somebody made a comment that was careless.
Right. I guess my concern as a Christian, as a leader, is that it reminds me of a comment from Hillary Clinton. She said once, if they go low, we go high. You remember that?
Yeah.
And that was in the whole her and Donald Trump in the first primaries leading up to the election of 2016, I believe. If I just remember that, they go low, and I think she might have got that from Michelle Obama, and I might be confusing the two, but it doesn't matter. The whole thought is that as Christians we should always go high, right? People should be able to look at us and say, "Oh, they act different." That I think that's what God meant or Jesus meant when he said, you're a city on the hill.
Yeah.
You're a light. We're supposed to put the lamp on top of the lampstand, not under it. And that means that how we deal with people, how we deal with these situations is going to look different than how other people deal with them. And I think sometimes we all develop bad habits and we get stuck in those bad habits. And there's some Christians who have gotten stuck in the bad habit of disrespecting authorities.
Yeah, right.
And they've never been able to break it. And because of it, they're just joining the world and how the world does things, right? Jesus said, I came to not be served, but to serve. When his disciples were arguing with one another about who was going to be first in the kingdom, he stopped it and he said, do not be like the pagans who lord it over people. See, this whole idea, how do you lord something over people? It's to press your power over someone. We do that with our words. We press our power with our words by undercutting people's character as disrespect in order to win an argument.
Right. Yes.
We should be known for that.
Right.
Right.
And we're told to not owe anything to anybody but love.
Yeah.
Like we should outdo each other when we show respect and love.
It's interesting too, because this goes across political. Okay. It goes to children who were raised by parents that maybe were less than honorable. Yes. How do you honor a parent who is pro-choice? How do you honor a parent who is no longer of the sex that they were born? Your father left and is now in an alternative lifestyle. And I mean, how do you do that? And I would argue that we should look to Daniel and his friends. O king, you can still render honor in some regard, even if your primary disagreement with that person is on the level that God wants it on. You can still use your words in a kind way. Yeah, right? Absolutely. I think that's where part of the solution of political nightmare starts there. That we as Christians need to represent Christianity well.
And I think you're getting at something too that we are afraid to show respect and care and kindness because we think we're giving up our argument. Right. I think we because I think there's an environment that for me to disagree with you means I don't like you.
Yes.
Or I hate you, and
that's interesting.
And it's not. We know that's not true. Like we can disagree with all kinds of people, but we get drawn into that. I get drawn into that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
They don't like what I say, so therefore they're evil.
Yes. I was actually talking to my son about this today, that this whole idea of being able to disagree and still like someone.
Yes.
There's this whole idea, and I think this really happens with youthfulness, but honestly, sometimes you've heard of someone saying, well, that guy's 50 years old, but he acts like he's 18. You know, I mean, the whole maturity process. I know 18-year-olds that act like they're 70. You know,
Right.
you, Elijah, you're an old soul.
Oh, well,
you know what I mean?
thank
You're
you.
like you drink tea and stuff.
Okay, you know what?
That's just crazy.
I mean, he's
What an
even
insane person.
You know, most guys, how old are you? 23.
23.
Most 23-year-olds are drinking 6 shots of espresso.
Probably, yeah.
Just to get
I
out
did
of
well
bed.
You
with
didn't
that.
see me in college, but
Anyways, there's maturity depends on a person's response of their heart to God.
yes.
Right, and then you grow the more you respond to God in obeying Him. You grow in maturity, and so there are some who mature faster than others and whatnot. But I think that this whole idea of if they disagree with me, they don't like me, is very much. I think our culture is awash in that.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's not. It almost. I know this because I know it in my own heart. It comes from a place of insecurity.
Yes.
That's a good point.
It comes from this idea that
Now.
I don't feel good unless people like me.
Yeah.
But how does that work with Christianity?
It doesn't.
No.
And also because, well, here's the issue. Both of those are wrong. You're not supposed to pursue feeling good, and you're not supposed to pursue being liked. That's the hardest part, I think, for us to comprehend sometimes, where it's like, I'm actually not called or given the opportunity even really to pursue likingness from whatever the word is, pursue being liked from other people. And my value is supposed to be set in something that's not myself. So how I perceive myself shouldn't be set by whether or not I'm liked by people.
Right.
Which is really hard because I think we as humans are hardwired we're communal creatures. Like we're hardwired to be liked by people, to be loved. The problem is we set our value in whether or not people like us and whether or not people communicate that. And then we're also, it's interesting because you talk about dislike and disagreement. Like they're not the same thing. Disagreement is a feeling. It's a perspective, right? It's your own thought process. But the issue is how we communicate it. Like the disagreement's perfectly fine. The problem is we communicate it through anger. We communicate it through frustration. Right. We allow the emotion to run the belief or the thought. And then we tie our identity into how people respond to that. Yikes, that's scary. And that's really dangerous too.
Or instead of trusting God, because this is where I go back to Daniel, right? Daniel chapter 3. O King, know this. This is how they start. O King, know this. We will not bow the knee to you, regardless of whether our God is able to. But whether he does or not, we will not bow the knee to you. Okay? They start with this, O King, and then know this. And the whole idea is that we are going to render respect to you by how we talk to you, but we are going to be confident in the sovereignty of God. See, if you're not confident in the sovereignty of God, you can't disagree with people without anger.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because you're going to use anger as a way to try to manipulate them to join your side.
Right.
That's when Jesus says that do not be like the pagans. He's talking to his disciples. Do not be like the pagans who lord it over their subjects. The lording over is using their power to manipulate people.
Yeah.
Now, we can do this several ways. We can use it through financial giving. We could give someone because we know that we're going to call in a favor one day. That's lording over. That's using power.
That never happens in politics.
Never
No.
happens at churches, right? So, I've never done it. No.
You've just given them the idea.
Right, I just planted the seed. Great. Or even this. How about this? Sometimes we use manipulation and threats in order to get something, right? So James says this in James chapter 1, the anger of man does not accomplish the righteousness of God. What was he talking about there? He had to be talking about this whole idea that when you're offended by someone, you have a desire to present your anger in such a way to cause them to repent, but that never happens. It is always the reverse. It always creates more anger. So there's this control issue that we have to let go of in order to be respectful. We have to trust God with it.
Right. And a lot of times that control piece, coming from like a psychological perspective, comes from, again, you're hinging your identity on something. Mm-hmm. So my sense of worth, my sense of belonging, my sense of being, whatever it is for you, that's the struggle. If it's hinged on how people respond to me, then you have to come at it with anger. You have to constantly defend it, because anytime somebody disagrees with my belief, they're disagreeing with me inherently as a person, and I'm going to be hurt by that. Whereas I think one of the most beautiful things about being a Christian, and one of the reasons I think that Christians have the opportunity to stand out in a really amazing way during unstable times, is that our security, whatever you want to call it, is not based on ourselves, because we all know we suck. I think if I was to give it like one simple word, it's like, we know the problem is us. Like I think I always tell people there's two things that should tie Christians together. It's that we all know we're broken, and we all love Jesus. Beyond that, like, there's not a whole lot that we've got. Like, it's those two awesome things of like, I am the problem, he's the solution.
Amen.
It ends there.
Amen.
So if our foundation's set in that, we have I think if we're not hinging our identity off of our need to be right, like, beautiful. We can have these conversations, we can have the discussions, knowing that at the end of the day, he loves us, and that's all that matters.
Right.
That's pretty cool. And that's, I think, what breaks my heart is when I'm watching a world right now that is just trying so hard to defend themselves, to put up their walls, to get ready for a fight. And I'm like, we don't actually have to have all our dogs in this fight. We should be involved. We should care. We should be passionate, all the things, but our sense of self, our sense of identity should not be anchored in this, because it's not going to go the way we want it to, no matter how you look at it.
Well, and I think you've really hit it, and you mentioned it earlier, but when we take our eyes off of that fact that Jesus is the solution, we put that onto other people who can't possibly be the solution. We do it with our spouse. They're going to solve all my problems. And when you get married, you find out really quickly your spouse doesn't solve all your insecurities and all your problems. They have a great God-given way of bringing those to the surface.
You're rocking my world right now, Stuart. I don't know how I feel about that.
I know. I'm sorry.
That was my
your truth bomb for the day. Yeah.
There it is.
But I think we do the same thing with politics. We put it on, if only my candidate gets elected, or if only they would pass this bill or make this policy, somehow life will just be perfect. And we find over and over again, it's disappointing. And we go back to the same race. We go back and believe it again. Every 2 years, every 4 years, it's going to change. It'll be different this time. And it's not.
Well, let's step back even further than this, because this goes so much deeper than we're discussing right now. Because I imagine people listening online are like, yeah, but listen, I can get on board with you if you're just talking about me personally. Right. But there are policies enacted that implicate my children, that jeopardize their safety. Like, having a different gender in the locker room to change because they think they have a different sexual identity, he, she, they, whatever. And this whole idea is like, okay, I can trust God and not be angry until I have a boy changing in my daughter's locker room. Yeah. Right? I mean,
and I've got 5 daughters, so this is this is a hot issue for me.
Okay, so a couple of years ago, I went to a school board meeting, and I did not present myself well as a pastor of this church because I was hot. That they would allow guys to dress in the dressing room at the local high school, and it happened to be a high school I was involved with that I coached at, that I love. But my whole incensed feeling was, well, they did a huge background check on me for being a coach. They questioned my past drug use when I got thrown in jail for marijuana at 18, and had to question me about that. But they're letting this dude change in the locker. And so I was like, what in the world? This is the world we live in. And so when I went to go read my little statement up in front, I was mad. I mean, I even walked mad. I saw a video of myself. I was like, dude, I look like a bulldozer. Like, who'd want to go to that church, right? Now, I don't regret the fact that I said what I said. It's how I said it. Okay, yes. And why? Because this is about my daughter. Now it's become really personal. And the question is, how do you respect someone when their decision, their policies are implicating the safety of your children? Because listen, You get in between Mama Bear and her cubs, and like I know some people, like I know some people where I'm like, I'm staying out of that. I'm not getting between her and what's going on with her cubs. You know what I mean? So, how do you do that?
I thought you had the answer.
I'm asking.
We're looking at Elijah.
The non-parent in the room who's just sitting over here. Great.
This is a real
guys.
issue.
No, it's huge
because we can talk about this all day. I know the scripture that the anger of man does not accomplish the righteousness of God. I know that scripture inside and out because I've had to memorize it for my own self. But man, when someone's jeopardizing the safety of my children, I lose respect very quickly. I mean, it's just come and gone. It's, so how can we respect people even when their policies are threatening the safety of our family and the prosperity of our lives?
I'm going to give you more ammo in that gun, and hopefully it'll lead us down a path that might that might bring some resolution. But if you think about it too, what I see a lot, again, not a parent, so I can't speak on parenting issues very legitimately, but what I've seen as like an observer right now in our climate is that people are using their kids as battering rams. So now the children are being used to accomplish our mission, our goals, or like whatever our agenda is. The reality is now then, okay, parents are having to deal with the fact that this is going to hurt down the line. And it's the security of your children. I almost think you have a right to being passionate about that and angry about it.
For sure.
100%. Yeah. The thing that's interesting to me though, so I just read, I was reading Job, and I think I have it open. Job 9 is the section where Job is talking about, do I need a mediator between the bad and God, who's allowing the bad, and myself? And he basically just comes to the conclusion of like, what can I do to stop God from doing what God's going to do, from making God intervene on my behalf, to like have him fix all this stuff that's going bad? Because I know he could, but for some reason he's not choosing to. So that's I think it's just kind of an expansion on that. The anger of man doesn't accomplish the righteousness of God, right? Where it's like God, like for us to believe in him and who he says he is to believe that he could stop all of this from happening at any moment. I think that's one of the things that makes it hard, is because we have a dog in the fight in the sense that, yes, it's our kids and we have to defend them. And we're called to do that as even believers. Like God is very clear that like we are to protect children and the most vulnerable members of society. And when society doesn't, it's hard because we give it all we've got. But at the end of the day, the question then is who actually wins this battle in the end? Because it's not me. And so that's not really an answer, but it's an interesting direction of like what, like how much are we willing to trust him with those matters, and how much should we be involved? That's, I think, within where we ask the question.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, like, thinking back to Daniel, they were willing to face consequences for standing up for what was right.
Yeah.
And I think I oftentimes have a misguided understanding of, if I stand up for what's right, the rest of the world's going to applaud and I won't face any consequences for that. And so we didn't have, our kids are homeschooled, so I guess our bathrooms are not gender neutral. 5 girls at my house. I got my wife. I'm lucky to have any use of the restroom at all anyway. But for us, it was like that battleground when it was kind of a little more hot, a few years ago. And it's still raging, but it was like at stores where my kids would go into. So like at Target specifically, and then a store that we might frequent, and then we have to make the decision: do we go to this store, or do we just choose? At this store we don't use the restrooms. Period. And so, does it alter my lifestyle? Yes. Should I have to? No. But am I willing to? And so that was, I don't know if it was right or wrong, but our response was, we're just going to not be in places that are going to put my kids in danger. Right. So if they have, there's workarounds in some of them. But the problem, and I'm thinking like, man, I'm not sure what I would do. I think I'd be right there next to you, like walking in like a bulldog, because when your kid goes to school and there's no other option, then what? Like you can't tell them to go run it out in the field and go find a tree in negative 20 degree. And
well, let's say you're a widow. Your husband died of cancer. Your wife died of cancer. And you have to earn an income. They've got to go to public school. because for some reason you weren't able to find a homeschooling to help you or whatever. There's various situations, but what do you do with something like that? You know, I mean, you
feel trapped.
You feel trapped. You feel at the subject of really bad policies and misguided morals, and honestly, a lack of truth, because that's where our culture is. It's just truth doesn't really even matter anymore. So what do you do in that? And the recourse that I can think of is you do what you can to protect your children. At the end of the day, they're our responsibility, right? So we do have decisions to make. You pray for God to open up a door, because I don't believe God wants that situation at all. It's against his morals. So God, it says, seek and ask and you will find, right? Knock and the door will be open. I believe when God's people pray prayers of righteousness, that God will answer those prayers, but he's going to do it in a way that we trust him, right? So we're still called to be a light on the hill. How do you be a light on a hill when, and I wish I would have done this better at the school board meeting. I heard that, and I've never really verified this, but I heard that at the next school board meeting there was a local pastor who obviously was way more godly than I am, who went there and basically said he gave affirmation for all the hard work that the board had done, and then offered to pray for them, and they allowed him to pray there. And I thought, there's a part of us where we are so hyper focused on the things that are threatening us that we often don't take the time to encourage and thank for the good things that have happened. It reminds me of that passage in Philippians: whatever is noble, whatever is honorable, whatever is righteous, whatever, think of these things. And we oftentimes fail to recognize people who've spent hours and hours making good decisions, who might have inherited bad decisions, who might have, and we need to encourage them. I think the way to influence is through being loving by seeing the good in some things, so that you can speak into that. A lot of people shut down when you go straight for the throat.
Right.
I do.
We are no exception to that. Yeah.
Yeah, you're so oddball. Yeah, that's weird. Yeah. You're the only one.
Yeah, exactly.
I was just thinking I think it's Proverbs that a kind word turns away anger, much wrath, and so I think the common thing we keep coming back to is not the change of your heart passion, not what's right and wrong is not changing. It's or what you passionately believe, but it's how we communicate with people.
Yeah.
It really comes down to it. So it's not saying be a doormat, be passive, let people do whatever they want to you. No, there's times to stand up. There's times like Daniel to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego going into the fiery furnace, like standing up against a king and knowing this is not going to end well for us.
Yeah, interesting.
But we are full circle here now. That we started this discussion out with the political climate and the divides on each side, and how they're exacerbating the issues, and how it's actually led. Now I know that guy, I forgot his name, that young man who pulled the trigger at Trump. He is ultimately responsible. Only he can pull that trigger. But the climate has allowed for so much venom that we have been throwing knives verbally at one another for a long time. So it's coming full circle. We're basically saying, listen, as Christians, that's not our approach. That we can say, because we live in a country of free speech, but even if we didn't, the Bible's example is we're to respect and we're to stand on God's principles verbally. And then what comes. And so I think that's good.
And that leads to, it exhibits trust in God, which is what you were hitting on. You've hit on is that's really just faith in God lived out in how we behave.
Yes, absolutely. I love. I think you read it, Unoffendable. Did you read that?
Oh yes.
Yeah. So I love the book Unoffendable. You
still owe me that book, by the way.
I have a copy for you. Yes.
I heard you say that one time, and it's on my list to get from you.
I think that's our next study, possibly for staff meeting. We've gone through this book Unoffendable, and the premise of it is essentially this idea of how do we as Christians live a life where we're unoffendable in little things, the big things? How do we just live out forgiveness in like the constant everyday? And one of the things he does a really good job of talking about that's pulled straight out of, you can find constant examples of this throughout the Bible, is, are we allowed to pursue injustice? And he's like, absolutely. Like, yes, you are called to like, to care for the orphans, the widows, to like pursue justice for your family, to keep everyone safe and protected and all this stuff. And what he does really well, I think, by building up to that, is talk about your heart posture. So your heart posture is now more focused on, okay, my life is aligned in following Christ and following God. And that's it. That's my goal, my North Star. And as you're pursuing that, the precipitation of that is love to everyone. And so as you're pursuing injustice, you're still reflecting that love. You're still reflecting a Christ-like attitude in all that you do. And that changes how you go about it. So it doesn't come out as malice and anger. It can come out as passion, because, right, like, we're passionate about these things as our children. We want to protect them. But what we're doing is we're reflecting how God forgave us and how we're now pursuing justice for the world that we're finding ourselves in. So there's nothing wrong with what, like, with that passion, with that love, with that luster for like the right thing, because it was instilled in us by God. Like, he gave us that sense of right and wrong. He is the only one who's righteous in this world. So if there's ever a sense of righteousness and of injustice, it came from him. Yeah. Because he's the one who created right and therefore wrong.
Something I was thinking when you were just saying that was how often I have dismissed somebody else's content of their argument because of their passion.
Yes.
I just didn't like the way they told me something.
Right.
And
it's
so
all communication.
Totally.
And so then they dismiss it. Well, clearly, so I use it as almost like I can pick that apart a lot easier than I can pick your argument apart.
Yes.
And it takes a lot more relationship to pick the argument, the actual content apart, and time.
Yes. One of my favorite things of all time to do, and I did this with my small group this year, is to sit in a really heated debate and to play the middle ground guy, and just like pretend I don't care and like go pacifist about the whole thing. And then at the end go, what do you think my opinion is?
You know, people like you really frustrate.
Oh, I know. Because it's people like you that I do this.
That would make me mad.
So,
because I want you to be authentic, right? I just want you to say what
I promise
think.
you, I will be authentic, and I'll give you the. And I did,
be the
but I wait till the
middleman.
end because you know what
Just
happens.
a bowl of pudding in the middle.
I promise I don't do this exactly. I don't do this all the time. I do it in selective situations, but what I do it as an experiment. So I did it with my small group, and at the end I go, so which side do you think I do? Oh, obviously you're the like way over here. Like, what was the issue? It was it was children. It was like, it was something, no. Oh, creation. That's what it was. It was creation, the literal 7-day creation versus the like, all the other opinions on creation. And he gets to the end, he goes, obviously you don't think it matters and you believe in evolution. And I'm like, no, I'm definitely a 7-day creationist. I'm like 100%. But you, because I didn't give you a firm answer, assumed that it'd be over here in wishy-washy land, which is fair. But it's interesting that we jumped to that conclusion.
But that's something I've seen too is when you listen well to other people and you don't respond, sometimes they assume you agree with them.
Exactly.
That silence they take as agreement. Yes. And
that is definitely true. That happens a lot in church conflict when you're hearing conflict from different parties. That happens all the time. Yeah. Because in order to communicate well, you have to listen well so that people know they're heard. Just because you listen well doesn't mean you agree with what they're saying.
My wife gets on me because, like, I got all girls, like I said, so they have conversations that I feel like are light speed, and I feel like I'm swimming through molasses trying to get a word out, and they think, well, I don't have any opinion on this, and they'll get done with a 30-40 minute conversation, and I'm like, I got a lot of opinions on this, but I'm a slow processor, and so I want to think through before I, throw something out there, and then I try, and then they're just going though. There's no room. They don't take a breath.
Yes, that must be exciting for you.
I just feel like this is the way I feel like in the world. I feel like my mind is just like a gear turning real slowly. Yeah, and I'm living in a house with like gerbil speed thinking, and I just can't keep up.
That's amazing. I love that. So
Sorry, I probably revealed a little too much about
That's funny. No, that's good. That's good. It relates in many areas.
it does actually. And now I'm wondering, now that you have that like slow methodical processing, we've gone about an hour. What have you come to? Have you had a beautiful epiphany that you failed to share with us up till now?
I have all the solutions. I just don't want to share them with you.
Oh,
Yeah.
He just hadn't fully thought them out yet.
That's right.
He needs another hour.
The line I use with my kids is, because they'll come up and want a decision now, and I'll say, if you want to answer now, the answer is no. Okay. If you want me to think about it, then you can come back.
Ooh,
like
that's
that.
a good strategy
So
with kids.
Yeah. That's
Too bad mine are almost gone.
Yeah, when they come back and you still give them a no, then you're in trouble. Yeah.
Yeah.
They stop trusting you.
That's fair. Actually, I could see that. Yeah, 100%. Oh man. So if we're to look at this big picture, what is your takeaway? Like, how do we apply this practically as Christians? What do we do about it?
Well, I think it comes back to what I said just a minute ago, that, you know, in a time of extreme polarization, when each side is very verbally abusive, when each side is wielding knives out of their mouths, basically. Yeah. Gosh, I just read that Jack Black's band, which is called Tenacious D. Jack Black said happy birthday to one of his team, bandmates in a live concert, and said, make a wish. And the guy said, I wish the guy wouldn't have missed.
Whoa.
Ouch.
I mean, just think about that.
That's crazy.
Just think about this. And this is a guy that is in Walt Disney films, right? I'm not calling for cancellation, because I firmly don't believe that. But that is careless. That's super careless. And it's not only careless, it is calling for more of the same. So how do I avoid something like that? Well, literally living like Jesus. Literally turning the other cheek. Literally render to Caesar's what Caesar's, and render to God's what God. Literally, I don't know if you guys know this. Most people don't know this. But Jesus, during his reign, or not Jesus' reign, but during his time on earth, which I guess we'd call a reign in a sense, but the guy reigning on the throne in Rome, his name was Emperor Tiberius. And Emperor Tiberius was a pedophile. Yeah, people don't know that he used to take boys that were slaves who didn't have any parents to his island, and after he was done with them, he'd throw them off the cliffs. How come Jesus never publicly? What was he doing during that time? So because when you understand this background, you realize there's many hills that Jesus could have chose to die on. What hill did he choose to die on? The one with the cross. He chose to die for Tiberius. See, so now that's really going to show you the heart of Christianity. The heart of Christianity is that the guy at Tenacious D is just as wicked as me. He just is not obeying God. So what does it mean? It means that as Christians, we are to be the light of the world, which means we are going to respond differently.
Well, and the rhetoric breaks your heart rather than get you spun up.
Right.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it does. It does break my heart. I mean, I don't wish any ill will to Jack Black. Matter of fact, all my kids think I look like Jack Black. I said I just don't have his money.
I think you kind of do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a good way. All the good
I
ways.
appreciate it. I definitely love to be as funny, because I think the guy's super funny, but it does super break my heart. And it's not necessarily a reflection of Jack Black. I know he's publicly Democratic. He's spoken for Joe Biden, and I know he couldn't control his band member when he asked him to make a wish. I get that, but again, Jesus died for them. He loves them. They should be more careful with the words, but we should not be reacting and calling for them to be somehow mistreated because of the careless word. So now what I'm doing is I'm saying, as a Christian, I fail to remember that Jesus died for me because my sin was that bad that I demand someone else to die for theirs. Do you see? I think that's the core of what we're talking about. That we should never forget the gospel in the middle of how we portray political climate and debates and how we portray Jesus in the middle of this. So that's how we're supposed to be.
There's this weird thing I've seen lately. It's this, so, and I actually fully understand where this is coming from, but a lot of the online, whatever you want to call it, around Christians is that they think they're better than everybody. There's this perspective of like elevation. I'm like, no, actually it should be the other way around. I don't think we've necessarily I'm not saying us specifically, but as Christian collective, I don't know if we've represented this well, but there's this idea that what we recognize is we're actually not better than you. In fact, we're just as bad, if not worse. Like, and that's the whole point. It's like, we're choosing now to stop relying on ourselves for goodness or righteousness, whatever it is, and to rely on God, to rely on the gospel, to know that like our sins are forgiven, and we want that for everyone, and death has been accomplished. Yes. Like the price has been paid. We don't need this to keep happening. I think that's what breaks my heart. Yep. Like we actually don't need to be suffering to the extent that we're still suffering. We don't need to be in this mindset of like life for a life for it. Like we got to even everything out at the end of the day. It's like, it doesn't matter. It's been accomplished. It's been accomplished.